Roster and lineup stability have been such a huge part of this 9-3 start for the Giants, but tonight, their first significant change.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday, talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and RotoGraphs. Been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. And coming up on today's show, we are going to get into the first significant change by the Giants in their lineup this whole season. And it's not been that long of a season. They've played only 12 games, but notably they've made 0 roster moves, and that streak continues here. And a lot of that is just health, and they haven't yet had a injury that's warranted a roster move. I say yet because it really can and will happen. But it's a lineup change, and it's at the top, the very top. It is Lamont Wade Jr. being dropped down to 6th in the order, and Mike Yastrzemski, moving all the way up to number 1 in the order. And I think it's a very justifiable thing to do. Mike Yastrzemski has swung the bat about as well as anybody in baseball. If you look at, there's obviously been a lot of good performances in a small sample, but Mike Yastrzemski, actually, yes, number 14 in weighted runs created plus in all of baseball out of 179 players. Mike Yastrzemski essentially has been the 14th best hitter so far this season. Does that mean that will continue? Of course, no. But he's hitting .344 with a .462 on base and .594 slugging. So right from the jump, his at-bats have been great all season long. His walk rate is almost 18%. It's 17.9%, which is 11th in baseball. It's really high. And his on-base percentage of .462 is 5th in all of baseball. So the caveat here is that just because that's what he has done, it doesn't mean that's what he's going to continue to do. He has a long track record of being who he is, and suddenly, based on 10 games that he's played in, you don't just expect that this performance he's put up this year is the new norm. That should be obvious. And the same is true of Lamont Wade Jr. in that he struggled mightily. If we look at the leaderboards in reverse and look at who have been some of the least productive hitters, you're going to find Wade, who's hitting .105 with a .146 on base percentage and a .289 slugging. I feel like his at-bats have been better than that, but the results clearly just haven't been there. However, being dropped down to 6th isn't exactly being dropped down to 8th. And so I think that this move shows that Bob Melvin still has a lot of confidence in Lamont Wade Jr., as do I, but it's more about putting the hot hand right at the top, because if you look at the top 2 with Wade and Adames, those 2 have struggled a ton, and so you're getting no production out of the top 2 spots in your lineup, and that's not really ideal, of course. Jung-Hoo Lee has been good. Matt Chapman has been solid. Heliot Ramos was doing well, but has kind of started to cool off. And then Wade is hitting 6th. Wilmer Flores in that number 7 spot where he's kind of been all year long for the most part, followed by Patrick Bailey and then Tyler Fitzgerald. A lot of this, like Bailey and Fitzgerald, you could probably argue that Bailey should be 9th and Fitzgerald 8th, although some might say that you want that fast guy hitting 9th as opposed to the slower guy. I don't know that I necessarily agree. I think it's just about breaking up the lefties and the righties. So it goes now. It's the same, actually, because they had, to start the year, they had Bailey hitting 6th. And honestly, I think one of the first things I said when the opening day lineup came out was that for me, I would switch Yastrzemski and Bailey. Yastrzemski then was hitting 8th and Bailey 6th, and that kind of didn't make sense to me because Yaz just has a track record of being the better hitter between himself and Patrick Bailey. But I think that when Mike Yastrzemski is going well, and he always, every year he goes through stretches where he's hot, and he's really been unlucky in my opinion, like in that he seems to, I hope I'm not jinxing this, which of course isn't really a thing, but he seems to get hurt at like the worst times when he's rolling, and then he comes back, and then it takes him forever to get hot and to get in a groove. So this season he started out red hot, and so hopefully I hope he just like takes care of himself, doesn't push it too hard and pull a hamstring or something, because we've seen that too often. But when he's going well, to me, like the swing and the home runs, it's just one of the prettier left-handed swings in the game when he's going well. And right now, it's going very well. And that walk-off home run, I mean, every time he hits a splash hit, it really is like reminiscent of Barry Bonds. I know that's like a crazy comp, and I'm certainly not comping Yaz to Barry Bonds, but I'm saying the aesthetics of the swing. Out of any lefty, like you think about Brandon Belt or something, and it wasn't, Belt had kind of a funky swing, but Yaz, it's just really pretty when it's on. And the pitch that he hit, 95 on the inside edge into the water, I mean, that just tells you when a guy is dialed. And so the Giants will be facing Marcus Stroman, a player that the Yankees apparently wanted to trade in the offseason. If you look at the numbers this year so far, they're not pretty. 8 2/3. He's allowed, I mean, his ERA is 7.27. The expected ERA is 5.60. Doesn't strike people out really. I mean, it's like, he strikes some people out, but it's not a high strikeout rate. Tends to keep the ball on the ground, but that trend has kind of decreased the last couple of years. And it's just been a struggle for Marcus Stroman. And so hopefully this Giants lineup, hopefully Willy Adames can get it going, and hopefully Yaz at the very top can set the table. And I really do believe in Lamont Wade, like probably even more so long term than Mike Yastrzemski, just simply based on track record. So I just want to look at projections really quick. Also, Wade, by the way, 31 years old. Birthday is January 1st. 31 years old. Yastrzemski is 34, going to be 35 in August. And projections for Yastrzemski, kind of just slightly above average, and projections for Lamont Wade Jr., just a little bit better than that. But Wade has projections of like a 340 to 350 on base percentage, whereas for Yaz, the on base percentage in the low 300s, but hitting for more power. And that's generally just been the track record for these two. So I understand the switch, but I think long term, we still know who they are. But I think Yaz has a bigger season in him if he can just avoid injury, and when he's hot, like stay hot and not get hurt right at the wrong time. I feel like that's happened for multiple years in a row. So coming up in just a minute, we're going to get into the other side of the pitching, which is Robbie Ray. Will he regress or impress in New York tonight? We'll get into it in just a minute. And before we do, Today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades. Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you will find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, here we go. Will Robbie Ray regress or impress in New York? It's a kind of matchup on paper that doesn't favor Robbie Ray, who's a fly ball pitcher and tends to give up a home run or two in a start. And this Yankees lineup has just gone bananas, especially at home. If you look at the team leaderboards for offense, the Yankees are far and away number one. Like their team, I was talking about how Yaz has been one of the better hitters in baseball by weighted runs created plus. What did I say his was? Yaz is at 193. Okay, that's better than I remember saying. But a guy like Jung-Hoo Lee, I think, is somewhere around... I can't find him off the top of my head. But the point is, the Yankees as a team have a weighted runs created plus of 147, which means they've been almost 50% better than league average offensively as an entire team. And at home, I think those numbers are going to jump even further upwards, which is not to say that they can sustain that. And like, you know, the whole thing about the torpedo bat, I mentioned it. And if you haven't heard of it, like, you're not paying super close attention. Like it got so much attention. These special bats that teams, certain players on teams have been using, and the Yankees in particular, got a lot of attention because they had just an offensive explosion in a game. And yes, sure enough, at home so far this year, the Yankees have a 649 slugging, a 371 isolated power, a 185 weighted runs created plus. So all of that is not really relevant because it's just a handful of games. But at the same time, you are going to go out there and face Aaron Judge. And I don't know. I mean, do I think this Yankees lineup is actually as good as they've performed? I mean, Cody Bellinger hasn't been good. Paul Goldschmidt is like almost 38 years old. He's been good, but not really hitting for power. It's been more of a batting average on balls in play phenomenon for him. Anthony Volpe is having a nice offensive season so far. I say season. It doesn't even really feel like that's the right word at this point. But Trent Grisham, remember him from his days with the Padres? He's been really, really good. So I don't know how much longer I would expect that because he's historically been below average. But a couple of younger players, Ben Rice is 26 and is having a monster start to his season, hitting 306, 419, 667, slugging, and that's a left-handed bat. So I don't know if he is going to be in the lineup. We probably have a lineup, but he looks like there's a platoon going on with, I don't know exactly. Oh, he's been DHing. So I don't know who. I'm sure I could pull up the Yankees lineup actually and see. But Jazz Chisholm is another guy. They got a lot of lefties now all of a sudden, like Rice and Bellinger and Chisholm and Austin Wells. and then some switch hitters, like I said, Trent Grisham and some switch hitters mixed in. For a long time, the Yankees were very right-handed. But anyway, I say that all because Robbie Ray is going for the Giants, and Robbie Ray is left-handed. So, that gives you a chance as a lefty to neutralize some of those lefties, but then you got to go after the righties like Aaron Judge in particular. So if I'm looking at this lineup, if I'm Robbie Ray, going like, I'm not going to just throw meatballs to Aaron Judge, which is like the most stupid and obvious thing I've ever said on this show. But like, I'm going to try to make whoever's hitting behind him, I guess probably it's going to be I think actually it's Cody Bellinger who's been hitting behind Judge. And, I'd much rather take my chances there than go after Judge. So let me see if I can pull up that Yankees lineup. The main point to make is that you may look at like the MLB app and see Robbie Ray's ERA and see that it's 3.18 and be like, all right, Robbie Ray is back. He's doing great. But I look at that, and then I look at what's next to it, which is the expected ERA, and that number is 747, like the airplane, like the balls that could be flying over the fences, like flying like an airplane. Ominous. 747 is the expected ERA for Robbie Ray. So I mentioned this the last time he pitched, that I thought that there were just a lot of balls hit really hard off of him that kind of found gloves, hard contact in the air. And Yankee Stadium is not where you want to see that. Is not where you want to see that. And so that's why I say, will he regress here tonight? Like, is this the game? I mean, even this season with the 3.18 ERA, he has allowed almost 2.5 home runs per 9 innings, which is crazy. So he's pitched, it's a small sample, again, 11 1/3 innings and allowed 3 homers and only 4 earned runs. So I don't know if all of the runs he's allowed have been on homers, but yeah, you're just not going to live this way and be safe. Last year with the Giants in 30 2/3, he allowed 1.76 homers per 9. You want to be down closer to 1 versus certainly in the 2s. Now, in his Giants career, Robbie Ray's home runs per 9 is 1.93. So if you're allowing 2 home runs per 9, like that's a problem. And you pitch at Oracle Park, but now you're going to Yankee Stadium. And so it's not just the expected ERA. The fielding independent pitching is 694. The quality of the pitches, only the fastball has graded as above average. The slider and the changeup and the knuckle curve have all graded as below average, not just as overall pitches, but compared to the league average slider and changeup and knuckle curve. And he hasn't had great location. His walk rate is actually a ridiculous 26.3%. He's walked over a quarter of all batters he's faced this year. Actually, no. I'm sorry. That was 2023 in Seattle. It was because I had clicked something. His walk rate is 13.6%, which is high, but it's not over a quarter. But his strikeout rate is the same, 13.6%. So that's a high walk rate and a very low strikeout rate. And so need to see some strikeouts. I'm not going to forget the fact that he threw 5 perfect innings to start his season in Cincinnati. Like, he looked good then, obviously, but then he allowed 2 homers. And so that can happen with Ray. And the Yankees can kind of grind you down, and then if there's guys on base and you give up a homer, then your ERA is going to balloon. So looking at the Yankees lineup, they do have Ben Rice, the lefty, in there. They are going like with a lot of lefties in this lineup. So that's possibly something that plays into Ray's hands here. Goldschmidt is leading off. Speaking of, the change, people have questioned when the Giants would use, I don't know exactly who it was, but power hitters at the top. Goldschmidt leads off, Ohtani leads off. So, it's a different game than it was 15 years ago, 20, 30 years ago. And then Ben Rice batting second, lefty, Aaron Judge third, righty, and then Bellinger fourth. And so I'm pitching to Bellinger, like in any kind of situation. I'm not. Aaron Judge is just too scary. And Cody Bellinger, we know him from his time with the Dodgers. Yeah, he had some good seasons quite a while ago, but this year and in recent years, he's just been kind of mediocre at best. And not saying he's not dangerous. Anybody with a bat in their hand is dangerous, but when you have a lefty on the mound and you've got Judge followed by Bellinger, I just hope that they just don't mess around with Judge at all, especially tonight with a lefty on the mound. And then Volpe, followed by two lefties, Chisholm and Austin Wells, and then a righty in Peraza, and then Trent Grisham, another lefty. So a lot of lefties in there. So this could be Robbie Ray's chance to impress. And it's worth noting that the projections for Robbie Ray are solid, with him coming in with a strikeout rate projection of close to 25%, which would be above average, and a walk rate down closer to 8 to 9% versus the 14-ish percent it's been this year. So the big takeaway is that you can't really judge a pitcher based on two starts, both in terms of judging him just by ERA and saying 3.18, great, he's awesome, but also by saying, oh, the fielding independent pitching, the expected ERA, the strikeout rate, and all that. It can change on a dime, and it's kind of been weird for Justin Verlander, and I've gone into great detail about this, not to be too much on a tangent here, but Justin Verlander got rocked in terms of allowing runs the other day, but the strikeouts and the stuff quality ticked up in a big way, in a way that actually made me significantly more optimistic moving forward, even though the outing itself, when you look at runs allowed, was horrible. So that's what's weird about baseball. And you kind of got to pay attention. Like, the contact against Verlander wasn't good in that outing in which he gave up a lot of runs. And for Ray, the contact was good, but he didn't give up runs or hits in his most recent outing. So it was against Seattle. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Ray. I don't know what to expect, but I don't believe the ERA, but I also don't know that he's nearly as bad as the kind of expected number. So maybe somewhere in between. Hopefully he can take advantage of the lefties and not get, if Cody Bellinger beats him, so be it. But I don't want to see Judge hitting 2 homers off of Robbie Ray tonight. All right, coming up in just a minute. This is a big series, in my opinion, for a couple of young guys, Heliot Ramos and Tyler Fitzgerald. I'll explain why in just a minute and before we get into it. All right, here we go. We're going to get into why this is a big series, in my opinion, for a couple of young players, Heliot Ramos and Tyler Fitzgerald. And also I'm going to sneak in there Casey Schmitt. So like I said, this roster is this lineup, this position player mix, and the pitching mix is the exact same group that it's been, or that it was on opening day. So we've seen these guys. And one thing to note about Heliot Ramos and Tyler Fitzgerald and also Casey Schmitt is that for Heliot Ramos, he started off the year great, right? He had an extra base hit in the first 6, I don't remember, games of the season. But in the last few days, he hasn't really been doing well. And you start to look at some of the numbers. The strikeout rate is inching up towards 30%, which is not too surprising. His career strikeout rate is 27%. Right now it's 28.3. Last year it was just 26.1. Walk rate right now is just 3.8. Last year it was already below average at 7.1. So he's got to be a little more patient. You look at the chase rate and the percentage of pitches a batter swings at that are outside the strike zone. And right now for Heliot Ramos, he's swinging at 43.4% of pitches that are not in the strike zone, and that's high. So the previous 3 years in the major leagues, he's been around 30, his career number, let's just say, is 34%. And this year it's like 44%. So he needs to be more patient. He needs to be more selective. Look, he's an aggressive hitter, but this number jumps out and the walk rate is too low. And then it's reflected in the on-base percentage, which is 264, which is very below average. So for Ramos, like, yeah, don't change too much. He's definitely going to be an aggressive hitter. You don't want to take that away from him. But at the same time, he's gone a little bit too far in the aggression direction. You really don't want to be living with a 264 on base percentage. That's going to put you near the bottom of the league if you do that. So, I mean, just for reference, the league average on base percentage is 312, and I'm looking at the worst on base percentages. Of course, this early in the season, you're going to have guys who have just been in major funks, and their on base percentage is going to be bad. But 264 is, I mean, he's probably one of the few guys who has been above average overall offensively, if you look at like weighted runs created plus, but below average, like, or just to have a on base percentage in the 260s. Jazz Chisholm is another who's been above average offensively with power. And even Corey Seager actually above average, but a low on base percentage. No, there are guys who are in a similar position. So it's probably just small sample stuff, but I really want to see Heliot Ramos get back on track, and this is a good ballpark for him. He's got that opposite field approach and opposite field in the air. Like some of the balls he hit, like the ball he hit that would have tied the game that they lost 1-0, that was a great play in right by Jake Fraley, I think it was. That would have been a home run, the short porch at Yankee Stadium. So Ramos is hitless in his last 3 games. Hasn't struck out a ton during that time, 23% strikeout rate, and has hit some balls hard. But yeah, he hasn't had a hit since the 6th of April. And even then, it was just 1 hit. So he hasn't had multiple hits in a game since the 4th of April. So it's I want to see him bounce back. And then for Tyler Fitzgerald, he has really yet to get it going with consistency. One thing that stands out is his strikeout rate is very much under control at just 22.2%. That was a concern coming into the year. His career strikeout rate in the major leagues is over 30%, even counting this year's number of 22.2. But you look at the chase rate, and like Heliot Ramos, it really stands out at 40%, whereas last year it was just 29.4%. So as a team, I think it's partly by design. They were instructed, I think, by the previous regime, and think about like Justin Vealey and Donnie Ecker and all these hitting coaches. They're all gone now, and so it's kind of like the philosophies may be very different, but the Giants as a team have the 25th best, meaning whatever, like 6th worst on base percentage at 288. So you gotta get on base, and guys like Wade and Adames like not doing anything at all, that definitely hurts it. But for Fitzgerald, it's 265 is the on base percentage, and a lot of it has to do with chasing. And I mean, it's a little alarming. He's got to hit for some power too. Like that's one of the things that jumps out is that Fitzgerald, his batting average on balls in play is 292, but he hasn't hit for power, hasn't hit a home run. He had 15 home runs in 96 games. So this would be a good series. Yankees pitching is a little bit in shambles. Like Marcus Stroman, Garrett Cole is out for the year. Marcus Stroman is not having a great season. They tried to trade him in the offseason. You're going to face Carlos Rodon, who's not done well really since he put on a Yankees uniform. I guess last year was okay, but this year ERA is 5.19. Peripheral numbers are better now that I look at them. but he's a lefty, and then Ramos is going to be in there. Fitzgerald is going to be in there. So you're going to have your opportunities against some potentially vulnerable pitching. And for Casey Schmitt, it's a little bit of the same story. But one of the things that jumps out about Schmitt, well, first of all, it's the same deal. No walks and a 55% chase rate. So he's swinging away. He's already someone who's just been ultra aggressive in his career. Career chase rate is 41.6%, which is high. That's around where Ramos and Fitzgerald are this year, and I'm saying that's too high, but that's where Casey Schmitt has been in his career. But this year, he's following that same trend of Ramos and Fitzgerald of being like 10 to 15 points higher than his career number this season. So aggression, it hasn't led to poor results. They're 9-3 as a team, but like that's probably the highest chase rate in baseball. Like if I just had to guess, 55% of pitches outside the zone Schmitt has swung at. That's crazy. But he's also made contact with 92.3% of pitches in the zone. So it's a very interesting little profile for Schmitt. And the expected numbers are good versus the actual ones. And so I think like if Fitzgerald continues to struggle, there's a chance that Schmitt gains a larger role, but they're sticking with that consistency thing, and Schmidt's basically only been playing against left-handed pitching. So I don't know though. They're going to face a lefty in this series, and for Schmitt, he has an opportunity here because Fitzgerald has been struggling, and Schmitt had a good end to a season last year and has a very good expected numbers this year, a 337 expected weighted on base average, which is above average, like significantly above average. He's hit the ball hard, and he made a good defensive play too at first base the other day, cutting down a runner at home plate. So anyway, I just think it's a big series for those three, and I want to see by Monday if any of those three, or hopefully all of them, kind of step up and have a big series in New York. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen. Today, for your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter or X at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out a lot. So thank you in advance, and thanks to everyone who's done so already. Can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for listening. You are now Locked On Giants.